As technology grows to be more advanced, so does our understanding of it. It's much more sophisticated, but also much easier to use. Yet, in an almost paradoxical way, we end up more intimidated by it. The main way we curb this issue is by also making this technology more familiar, by making it feel less like working with machinery and more like interacting with a person. Naturally, with the boom of personal computers and, in turn, the World Wide Web, comes the rise of virtual assistants. These were the tools specifically designed to make the complex capabilities of computers mimic the simple conveniences of everyday life. Many of these assistants were fun. Being cute, warm, and highly customizable, they were more like digital pets. You would dress them up, play with them, and even take care of them. But the likes of Microsoft Bob, Clippy, or BonziBUDDY often came at a price. Not only were they mostly an unhelpful nuisance, a lot of them didn't exactly work in the user's best interests, even having ulterior motives that were quite malicious. These digital pets behaved this way because they could, which quickly gave them a negative reputation. But with the online landscape changing so much over the past decades, digital pets are experiencing a bit of a renaissance, and the sentiments towards them are now much more positive. These programs have ironically become symbols of nostalgia and a time where the internet was viewed as much more democratic. The infamous Microsoft Clippy is even being used as a form of protest against corporate automation and consumerism, and the technology that makes up all of it is remarkably simple. So what was the deal with digital pets, and whatever became of them?
Cameron's office. Did you read Life today? Who is this? Spurt. It's bad, Cameron. Real bad. We're at DEFCON 3, we're about to hit DEFCON 4. DEFCON 4 is better than DEFCON 3. I told you, 1 is the worst. Then we're at 0. There is no 0. Our Helix ad was placed next to some article about American Bandstand and the latest Dusty Springfield song, Breakfast in Bed, I don't know. They want to pull it. Wait, Sleeping Beauty? You worked on it for weeks. They said it's too lewd, suggestive. I haven't heard it, but they don't want people getting the wrong idea. They want a do-over. And I want you to be the man for it. You said your man was Ginsberg, and then you told me to take my idea and shove it up my... No, I don't want Ginsberg. He's terrible, okay? Please, just do this for me. You're my only hope. I'll give you till Monday. Bert, it's 4:58 p.m. on a Friday, and you sound a little under the weather. I'll make it worth your while. Plus, I may have already sent a Helix sleep mattress to your house. What? Consider it a token of my appreciation. Plus, you can keep it after. I know how much you hate your current mattress. I have a Helix myself, it's great. Well, I haven't had good sleep in a while. It's affecting my work, frankly. What's the angle? Basically, their idea is that they have made the mattress for everybody. In fact, you can even take a sleep quiz to see what kind of sleeper you are, or what kind of mattress works best for you. They specialize cooling covers for hot sleepers, free shipping in the US, easy to set up, 100-night sleep trial. It's out of sight. You'll love it. I'll see what I can do. Groovy. Hello. What the hell are you doing? You were supposed to submit your ad 2 hours ago. I'm not coming until Monday. It is Monday. I slept through the whole weekend. Now we're at DEFCON 0. Helix Sleep. The mattress so good, we slept on it.
Especially at the beginning, computers were very weak. Additionally, they were very large and confusing machines. It wasn't yet a portable device with a screen and keyboard that sat on a desk, but instead these large mainframes that took up entire rooms and displayed information through a bunch of blinking buttons and lights. There was a huge barrier to entry for what looked like mediocre payoff. It was just too akin to science fiction for everyday people to not be intimidated by it. They were building computers for people that already knew how to use them, not for people like you and me. If we really wanted to take advantage of the exponentially growing power of these machines, this had to change. Working with something as complex as a computer should be as easy as interacting with a person. In fact, there was a way of even measuring this through something called the Turing test. Developed in 1949 by Alan Turing, it is specifically meant to track how well a computer can mimic the behavior of a human. This was also known as the imitation game. Naturally, these machines got better at this as they became more powerful, and the window of opportunity to create easy yet powerful programs for them opened even further. By the 1960s, developers at MIT began entertaining this concept and got to work. Joseph Weizenbaugh came up with something called ELIZA, an early example of a chatbot designed for IBM mainframes. It was meant to simulate talking to a psychiatrist. You could tell ELIZA all your problems, and it would use something called pattern matching to generate a response. It did this by basically carrying a large list of canned responses and would use the most appropriate one based on the input. And this was, of course, determined based on the kind of words and typing style used in the prompt. It wasn't designed to create new responses based on unique situations. It instead just picked already written things that best fit what was asked. It would essentially just mirror what the user said, much like how a psychiatrist does. Consequently, this gave very limited responses that weren't particularly helpful, and ELIZA even had kind of an attitude problem. But still, for the time, it performed considerably well on the Turing test, as being quite human-like. Granted, the results weren't to their expectations, but its basic setup showed that something was there. More chatbots over the next several years would build onto ELIZA's basic framework, including a pretty controversial one from 1972 called Perry. This was designed at Stanford University to imitate someone with paranoid schizophrenia. The technology was getting better with time, but these bots were mostly just prototypical proof of concepts, a sneak peek into what computers could be. But as PCs got cheaper, more commonplace, and eventually even connected over something called the internet, the need and desire for computers was stronger than ever before. So, they needed to get easier to use. These machines had come a long way since then, favoring the click and drag graphical user interface over the convoluted command line environment. But this just wasn't enough. In the mid-1990s, Clifford Nass and Byron Reeves of Stanford University published research concluding that people have a tendency to treat inanimate objects like they are also human beings, give them a personality, develop relationships with them, even show them manners. Well, sometimes.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh my god, you f***ing moron! It's Wolfgang, you
This is especially the case when the inanimate object in question has human-like qualities. It then becomes more relatable and familiar to work with. This is demonstrated very well in the series *Halt and Catch Fire*, where a group of developers in the early 1980s are trying to create a revolutionary home computer. One character carries around a stuffed animal that her deceased father gave her when she was a kid. And even though it was just an inanimate object, he would wiggle it around and give it a voice. And now she had this inseparable connection with it. She realizes that you could do the exact same thing with computer software. Not only does a machine as complex as a computer now become easier to use, it's also more exciting to use, and you actually feel closer to it. This Stanford study provided a ton of insight into human connection with this technology, but other companies were also experimenting with the concept on a commercial scale a few years before, particularly Microsoft. Prior to Windows 95, Microsoft Windows wasn't exactly the most user-friendly system in the world. It was a big step for GUI environments in general, a trendsetter for the next decade, sure, but it could still be much better. especially with the internet boom introducing tons of people who had never even used a computer before. It had to be better. So in 1995, just a few months before the release of Windows 95, Microsoft Bob hits store shelves. It was a program that ran on top of the Windows interface to make computer interaction simpler and more literal. Rather than making an intimidating, overly technical environment, you make the environment look like a real place. If you want to put an event on your calendar, you don't open the calendar program in a little window. You literally head over to the calendar that's hanging on the wall and add it there. If you needed any additional help, your digital assistant of choice sat in the corner to guide you on, well, at least some things. Yeah, Microsoft Bob was not very well received among consumers, and sales of the program were underwhelming at best. Its overly kid-like interface often felt patronizing to the user and optically looked very out of place in a professional setting. Could you imagine showing a spreadsheet on this thing during a shareholders meeting? Not only that, its goal of making the desktop environment easier through familiarity just didn't work. Because as it turns out, the degree of separation through this approach and your standard desktop layout just isn't that big. In fact, you could make the argument that Bob's design takes more time to get things done because you have to switch between entirely different rooms and menus to do basic things compared to just switching back and forth between windows. So yeah, Microsoft Bob ultimately failed. But one of its most promising features was, of course, this desktop assistant technology. You could even choose the assistant you wanted, such as a wizard, William Shakespeare, Rover the dog, which was famously incorporated into Windows XP, and the most famous one, Clippy. Rather than fully incorporating the Microsoft Bob setup, they instead took it in bits and pieces. Microsoft learned it ultimately made more sense to just refine their already existing and successful desktop environment from Windows 3.1. Luckily, they had been working on Windows 95 at the same time, which took this approach and was released shortly after as a massive success. Their software suite, Office 97, introduced Microsoft Clippy to test these waters. In their mind, it was essentially the best of both worlds. You have a more hands-on and convenient design of the already successful desktop environment that had long since become the industry standard, and you had a little desktop buddy to help you make your way around. Clippy was cute, humorous, and personified the things that we often associate with the office workplace environment, like a paperclip. It still did the original functions, providing tips, a help guide on how to navigate your way around Microsoft Office, even a text box for users to request help on specific things, which it would find through keywords that the user typed in. It was the perfect compromise. Right? Well, not quite. Once again, many people saw Microsoft Clippy as more of an annoyance than anything helpful. It would randomly pop up, often at the least opportune time, and it would have this whole extravagant entrance animation, and you often had to wait for it to finish before you could close it. This entire thing really just slowed down any productivity just because of how distracting it was. Additionally, while Clippy did do its job of guiding beginners through how to use their computer, it was a bit excessive. One of the most common things it would try to teach is how to write a letter, which I think most adults who were alive before computers already know how to do. Clippy just didn't know what its target audience was. Much like with Microsoft Bob, it was still a little too overly cutesy-wootsy to be taken seriously in a professional environment. While this displeasure for Clippy was strong enough for Microsoft to eventually discontinue it in Office 2007, the sentiment was not unanimous. A lot of people actually liked Clippy, or even the idea of it, because it did in fact make the computer feel more friendly and personal. It made things feel more alive, and it also symbolized the increasing prevalence of user customizability. And desktop assistants start to become a bit of a trend throughout the 2000s for this reason. Unfortunately, some developers would nefariously take advantage of this through means of social engineering. In 1999, the internet would see the release of a new desktop assistant called BonziBUDDY. Now, this was the quintessential third-party bootleg software. It even used Microsoft Agent as the backbone of its technology, which was also what made up Clippy. Granted, this was properly licensed from Microsoft to be used, but its overall design made it clear that this was really just Microsoft's assistants with a different skin. There was not a whole lot that was changed about it. In fact, one of them was literally just a Microsoft Agent character that they straight up took from the program, Prody Parrot, which they changed to Petey the Parrot. According to some sources, Microsoft did not approve the use of this character for the program, which was the reason why, in 2000, it was changed to a talking purple gorilla. Now, I've done an entire video just about the tale of BonziBUDDY. It is an oldie but goodie. But the long and short is that at its start, the program did receive a decent number of downloads. One of the main reasons for this was arguably because the program offered a sense of agency. The main reason Clippy was annoying was because it was turned on by default in Office 97. Users were forced to deal with him, unless they manually disabled Office Assistant, which they may not know how to do if they aren't tech savvy. With BonziBUDDY, users voluntarily downloaded the program and more or less knew what they were signing up for. These were either young kids just getting into computers and liked the cuteness of the purple gorilla, or people who liked the idea of Clippy but wanted something with more capability and was less invasive. They also wanted something a bit more interactive than Clippy. Aside from just being there for help, BonziBUDDY could tell jokes to you, tell you fun facts, sing you a song, and a bunch of other things. This interaction was by no means one-sided though. You had to pay attention to him as well, just like a digital pet. For example, you could play games with him. Bonzi and I played a little checkers together, which of course has a sort of NPC version of Bonzi playing as the opponent. It was pretty fun, at least during the brief time my computer didn't crash. Additionally, if you clicked off certain menus or discontinued tasks, Bonzi would get all sad. Keep in mind that this was also during the tail end of the Tamagotchi era. You know, those little devices you had to feed, play with, clean up after, or else they would die. The idea of turning a computer into a friend was exciting when you were the one with all the control. It was in this way that BonziBUDDY greatly differed from Office Assistant's monotone, limited environment. The developers of BonziBUDDY were very aware of this, and that's when things went in the wrong direction. Under the guise of getting to know you, BonziBUDDY was actually collecting the user's information without their direct consent. You know, spyware. Additionally, simply downloading the program gave it special privileges to change your system's configurations and even download adware that created fictitious Windows alerts that indirectly prompted even more malicious downloads. Also, BonziBUDDY was really not that much better than Clippy when it came to being invasive and distracting. It may have seemed that way initially for those who downloaded it for the fun features, but the charm would quickly wear off as he continued bouncing across the screen and constantly talking. All these problems would ultimately lead to BonziBUDDY's fate, and the company that created them would shut down following numerous lawsuits and hefty fines. As computers got better, easier to use, and became a regular part of people's lives, the need for a desktop assistant started to feel more antiquated, at least in this form. As the internet and computers altogether became more minimalist to emphasize simplicity, so did the novelty of having a digital pet. In 2011, Apple releases Siri on the iPhone 4S. While by no means the first of its kind, it was definitely one of the first smartphone assistants to receive such mainstream commercial recognition. It used voice-to-text technology and the internet to gather information on the questions you asked, and it did so with a very basic setup. It only popped up when you asked it to, not taking up any unnecessary parts of the screen when idle. It was what Microsoft Clippy tried to do a decade before. The Siri format pretty much became the standard for computer assistants over the next few years, with things like Cortana, Bixby, and Google Assistant. As advanced as these programs were for their time, they weren't self-learning. It didn't remember your past conversations or things that you corrected it on. It still felt like using a computer, where users were confronted with the inconveniences and trapped within the limitations of contemporary technology. It wasn't until the emergence of self-learning artificial intelligence where it truly felt like you were talking to a person. So then things got too convenient. By creating assistive technology that becomes exponentially more powerful with time, it has allowed us, in many ways, to effectively play God. To no surprise, this is a newly bestowed privilege that has since been exploited by corporations and powerful parties, often at the expense of other people, and even sometimes their right to ownership. By having this godlike capability, we have forgotten what it's like to be human. It is this extreme swing of the pendulum that has left many people reflecting on the imperfections of yesterday's technology with a sentimental eye. Louis Rosman has uploaded a video where he urges everybody to change their profile picture to Clippy in solidarity of this exact issue. He highlights this snowballing trend of companies taking your data surreptitiously to either create an advertising profile unique to you or explore more deeply rooted ways to take away your right to truly own something. They are basically doing what BonziBUDDY got in trouble for all those years ago, but with much more capability. It's the illusion of agency. Clippy, as annoying as he was just trying to help, as Rosman states repeatedly throughout his video. Whether Clippy just wanted to help because of the technological limitations of the time, or because Microsoft's morals were in a different place, is honestly irrelevant, because either way, it is a reminder of our humanity and its imperfections. These digital pets were often annoying and invaded our desktops, but at least it was only the desktop. Clippy not only symbolizes a longing for the 90s and 2000s in an increasingly nostalgic world, but also a time where technology focused on the user's full creative control and choice for what they wanted their environment to look like. There's no reason to not continue holding on to these ideals, even if it's a bit more challenging today. Maybe instead of just uploading a Clippy profile picture, you can make your own fan art of Clippy as your profile picture. That way, it also sends a message that you still have the privilege of using great technology to create something that is truly unique to you. And even with these rising obstacles, no one can ever truly take that away. If you would like to see more videos about Clippy and these other iconic assistants in more detail, I have included links in the description. And you can find my other videos about nefarious social engineering right here. A special thanks to my Patreon supporters. Check out my remodeled patreon.com/nationsquid page, and you can always buy me a coffee as well. Thank you for watching, everyone.